I'd like to tell another story because I wish everybody would know about this. A number of years ago, uh, I've always been interested in politics, and so the doctor was aware at the time Rudy Giuliani was going to run for Senate against Hillary Clinton. He decided not to run because of prostate cancer. So he went and had an operation on it. The doctor mentioned at that time to me, he said, you know, he wouldn't have had to do that. He wouldn't have had to have that operation if he'd gone to Dr. Dewis in Germany and taken the treatment that he gives with radio waves. So I remembered that, and a few years later when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, I went back to Dr. Joseph's, got the information, went over to Germany, and long story, but I took the treatment and my prostate cancer never returned. Okay, but at that time then, Dr. Joseph's recommended that I take an annual AMAS test. That's, let's see, I gotta remember, it's anti-malignant antigens in serum. Okay, what it is, it tells you if your body is fighting off cancer anywhere. It doesn't tell you what the cancer is, it just tells your body's fighting it off. And it's an early warning. Gives you, so when I was several years after I'd had the prostate cancer, one of these treatments came up, one of these tests came up higher. And I was taking it with the doctor here. And so we sent another one in, and it was still higher, and the third one was even still higher. By that time, he said he wanted me to either go to a clinic down in Mexico, which I didn't want to do, or do something about it. So I knew of a treatment that I wanted to take by a medical group over here in Scottsdale, but I couldn't get a hold of the people I wanted to get a hold of right away. So I went to a book that the doctor keeps. He's a great researcher, and he had a whole book, loose leaf notebook about this thick, of possible things you can take, the nutrients that are over the counter that are found to be beneficial for cancer. And so I read through it, and I took a couple just on a flyer, because I knew I was going to have some time. And I took, one of them was maitake mushroom, and the other was peak immune 4. It was called another thing at that time, but that's what it was, peak immune 4. And the peak immune 4, and I went and I bought 3 months' supply of each one. And during that 3 months, I took them, and meanwhile, I found the oncologist I wanted to find, and I went through a series of tests with him, and his tests was a panel of tests. I think it was $1,000 or $1,500 worth of tests. And when he finished, and it took him a long while, some of them had to be sent over to Japan for interpretation. When it was all finished, he said, well, he said, my experience is if you don't start taking my treatments now, in a year to 18 months, you'll have a clinical cancer. That means a cancer big enough to see, which is essentially what the AMS test just told me. It's the same thing. So it was a real confirmation. So fine. All right, now 3 months about, I started taking the treatments from him. I just took one, I think, or two. And meanwhile, I'm running out of these nutrients. I said, well, you know, I don't know if they did any good, but just on the flyer, I said, all right, I'll run another AMAS test just to make sure that, you know, rather than spending money for more nutrients I don't need. So I took the AMS test, another one with the doctor here, and it showed me back to normal in 3 months. So I said, well, so I went to the oncologist. I said, well, you know, now I have an AMS test that's normal. He said, oh, it's a fluke. All right. So what I did was then, these tests are rather expensive. They're $165 or $200, something like that. So but the doctor pointed out to me that if my primary care physician would approve it under Medicare, then my insurances would cover it. I have a Medicare and then a supplemental. So I checked out, and sure enough, I took it to my primary care physician. He's a very good, open-minded man, and he read the literature. He said, all right, and he prescribed it. I took the AMS test, you know, under the insurance coverage, and again, it confirmed I was down at the normal level. So I continued to buy the nutrients and use them, and that's been over 5 years ago, and I've had regular every year. I do it with my physical, and every year I'm right down at normal. I also had an interesting experiment that I didn't intend to run. the level you arrive at maintenance is four of these a day. I usually take 2 at breakfast and 2 at lunch. And somehow along the way, I got the 2 wrong, and I was taking 2, but I was just taking 1 at breakfast and 1 at lunch. And I found out because I suddenly had more stuff than I should have. I should be buying some. In here I had a lot of stuff left over. And that's when I realized it. Meanwhile, I took an AMAS test, and sure enough, it was up. It was not not abnormal, but it was up. Clearly, it's related to the peak immune 4 level I was taking. So I went back to it. Now, a further confirmation is last year. Oh, and so then my primary care physician always included the AMAS test with my annual physical. He also gives my wife an annual physical. So he included it with hers. So we both go and we take our tests and have to do it at the airport and send it off and get it run back in Boston. And last year hers came up high. And, well, we didn't know, the doctor, a primary care physician, not an oncologist, he wasn't quite sure what to say. It's his first experience with the test. So what we did was we provided the peak immune 4 and a maitake mushroom to my wife. And she took it for 3 months. Meanwhile, she plays a lot of golf. She gets a lot of skin cancer. She has skin cancer removed at the same time. 3 months later, hers is back to normal. We took another AMAS test and it was back to normal. So she has continued the peak immune 4 as I have. And so that's the experience we have there. And I credit Dr. Joseph with the good advice he's given me all along in all these areas, even though he's not an oncologist, he doesn't claim to be one, he doesn't recommend any of this, but I'm recommending it from my experience, for what it's worth.